We're going to start with our project box that's included in the kit. This project box is going to turn into our remote control for our sea perch. So what you want to do is locate where you're going to want to put the switches for the forward and reverse, and then up and down on the box. Once you get a rough idea on where you want to put them, go ahead and lay out those locations on the box. You can use the marker directly onto the box, which will show, or take a piece of masking tape, place it over the box, and lay out your locations. So in my case, I'm going to lay my thumbs over. That looks like a good place. And I'll put one there. And I'll put one there. And then I'll put the two holes for my up and down controller on the side of the panel. I'll go ahead and put one here and one here. Okay, and those are the holes that we'll be putting the switches into. Now the other thing that we'll need in the box is we'll need to run the power lines into the box and our control wire into the box. So we'll go ahead and put a single hole on both sides. In order to run those cables. Okay. And then using our drill, again, we'll start with a small hole and then we'll open it up to a larger hole. As you lay this out, you want to take a look at the switches that come with it and make sure that you have enough room to put the switches in. If you end up having to move switches later in the process, that's okay. There's no reason you can't have plenty of extra holes. Now that we have our holes complete, what we'll want to do is disassemble each of the switches. Each of the switches will have two nuts, so make sure you get both. Okay. And we're going to install the switches backwards. So we'll go ahead and install all four of our switches, and then they'll be ready for us to do the soldering. And holding them in, we'll only use one nut, since we're only doing this temporarily. Now, the reason we do this is so that when we're doing the soldering, we can do the soldering out in the open rather than trying to work down inside our enclosure. Later, when we're all done, we'll take them all apart and put them out the proper ways. On the red switches, make sure they're both facing the same way with the writing on the switch. That will help when we do our soldering later. Our next step is to put together our power cable that we'll use to connect our controller and everything to the batteries. In the kit, we have some gold and silver speaker wire. We'll start by splitting apart the two sections. Usually just takes a good fingernail to split them apart. And we're going to split them apart for about a foot. So we have two individual strands. The next thing we're going to need is the fuse holder that's provided in the kit. Now the fuse holder, when put together, goes like that. And what we'll need to do is cut the wire so that you now have the fuse in the middle of the wire. Some of the kits may already have this cut. If it's not cut, go ahead and cut it. Otherwise, this is how you need to have it. Now what you want to do is take the gold strand and lay your fuse wire alongside. Do you know what that length is? Go ahead and cut the gold wire about a ½ inch short of the full length. This will allow us to insert the fuse assembly onto this wire and then have both ends still be the same length. Okay. Using the wire strippers, we will strip a ½ inch off of each of these. And we can do both of the wires on the speaker wire, all again for about a ½ inch. Okay. To get these two ready to be soldered together, go ahead and twist two pieces of wire together, and those are now ready to be soldered. As we're getting ready to solder, a few things to keep in mind. The soldering iron is hot enough to do all the soldering. You don't have to worry about, is it hot enough, is it going to work? Just have to give it enough time to do its job. You don't want to push it, you don't want to rush it, and it will happen very gently and very nicely. As we go through this and we do the switches and some of the other fine contacts, you'll find that a light hand is much better than a heavy hand with a soldering iron.